Ancient Mysteries and Modern Masonry by Charles Henry Vail. Introduction. The primary objective of these lectures is to examine the origin and nature of the ancient mysteries and modern masonry, and to elucidate the profound relationship they bear to one another. Freemasonry is deeply concerned with the ethical teachings and symbolism of the mysteries of antiquity, having originally served as one of the principal conduits of ancient wisdom. Among the founders of modern masonry, a select few possessed the royal secret, or, at the very least, possessed a profound awareness of its existence. Should the key to this secret have been lost, the Mason, as the heir apparent to the old wisdom, ought to be preeminent in the endeavor to recover it. It is universally acknowledged that Masonic symbols and traditions possess the utmost antiquity and can be traced back to the Far East during the epoch of the earliest civilization. From that time and place, they have articulated nature's language to all peoples of the earth. We are increasingly persuaded that the pictorial language of our ritual encapsulates a most comprehensive philosophy, a body of knowledge encompassing the eternal verities of the universe, and that these symbols were deliberately fashioned by the initiates of antiquity to preserve and transmit that ancient wisdom to present and succeeding generations. Although empires and dynastic continents have arisen and subsequently perished, these ancient symbols, hewn into rock-cut temples and monuments, have served to transmit the great secret from bygone eras and shall perpetuate its record for as long as this domain of the universe endures. Modern masonry has become, in a specialized sense, the custodian of these ancient symbols. It ought not to remain content merely with their possession, nor with the mere imitation of its diverse predecessors. Rather, it should boldly claim the inheritance of its birthright and pursue the ancient wisdom of its illustrious prototypes. To restrict the interpretation of its symbols and legends solely to lessons of morality and fraternity, akin to those found in all exoteric religions, is to fail to apprehend the profound meaning that these glyphs and parables were originally intended to impart. Many individuals today recognize this reality, and they are still seeking more light without, as well as within, the tiled doors of our lodges. In presenting the findings of modern research regarding the symbols and legends of antiquity and their significance within modern masonry, I shall not lift the veil from the inviolable secrets of the order. Instead, I shall endeavor to guide the initiate toward a clearer light, so that he may not only perceive for himself the connection linking the past with the present, but also begin to comprehend, through the cultivation of his higher Masonic manhood, the mighty truth of which these symbols speak. In this undertaking, I shall refer exclusively to those elements of Masonry that are exoteric and documented within our most esteemed publications. I do not profess to possess the knowledge requisite to unfold entirely the mystery and philosophy encapsulated within the glyphs of ancient times. Nevertheless, no thinking man of the present day harbors any doubt that they embody an occult science. And should I succeed in shedding even a modicum of light upon the profound subject of ancient symbolic mysteries, I shall consider my efforts amply rewarded. I am confident that these lectures shall prove both engaging and instructive to members and non-members of the order alike. While a select few matters discussed will be more fully comprehended by Master Masons, my overarching meaning shall remain discernible to all, and in the hope that these discourses may foster a superior understanding of the ancient mysteries and modern masonry, I earnestly entreat your careful investigation of the subject matter. Chapter 1. Mystery Institution Origins. Alongside the popular traditions and public cults of antiquity, there existed an esoteric religious organization, the Mystery Institution, which served as the sovereign conduit for secret traditions. Although our knowledge of the mysteries is not as exhaustive as one might desire, owing to the fact that they were guarded in antiquity with the utmost vigilance, the slightest violation of the oath of secrecy being punishable by death. We nonetheless recognize that the mystical dimension of religion, encompassing the knowledge of its highest cults and doctrines, was attainable exclusively through initiation. Every eminent teacher of antiquity passed through these sacred portals. This singular fact alone renders the study of the mysteries of paramount importance to Masons. The institution of the mysteries was to be found in all regions of the globe. There were the mysteries of Isis and Osiris in Egypt, the Mithraic mysteries of the Persians, the Orphic and Bakshik rites alongside the later Eleusinian semi-mysteries of Greece, the mysteries of Samothrace and Chaldea, the mysteries of India, the Druidical mysteries, the Gothic mysteries, and numerous others. Consequently, it follows that the true key to understanding antiquity lies in the knowledge of its mysteries. The late General Albert Pike, formerly Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council, Southern jurisdiction of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, illustrates this assertion by stating, "Through the veil of all the hieratic and mystical allegories of ancient dogmas, beneath the seal of all sacred scriptures, amidst the ruins of Nineveh or Thebes, upon the weathered stones of ancient temples, and across the blackened visage of the sphinxes of Assyria or Egypt, within the monstrous or marvelous imagery that the sacred pages of the Vedas interpret for the faithful of India, in the enigmatic emblems of our venerable volumes of alchemy, and throughout the ceremonies of reception, practiced by all arcane societies, we discover traces of a doctrine that is everywhere identical, yet everywhere meticulously concealed. The occult philosophy appears to have been the nurse or godmother to all religions, the clandestine lever maneuvering all intellectual forces, the key to unlocking all divine obscurities, and the absolute queen of society during those epochs when it was exclusively reserved for the instruction of priests and kings. The origin of the mysteries. The mysteries originated with the initial great teachers and guides of humanity. Denoted as the sons of Venus, they constituted the nursery of adepts, the very nucleus of the first Great White Lodge. The chief among them is identified by numerous mystical appellations within ancient texts, the root base of the occult hierarchy, the Kamara, etc. Surrounding this chief was a modest assembly of beings who descended to Earth to labor for the evolutionary advancement of a nascent humanity. Another order of beings who assisted in this monumental endeavor was designated as the Agnishvatas. Many of these entities, as we are instructed in the stanzas of Zion, ultimately became arhats. Thus, according to esoteric tradition, was the first great occult hierarchy established upon the earth. During those primordial ages, occult knowledge was promulgated openly, much in the manner that the sciences are instructed within our modern universities. Over the course of time, however, numerous individuals permitted their selfishness to govern them, abusing their acquired power to such an extent that it became imperative to withhold this sacred knowledge from the unworthy. Such was the prevailing state of religious affairs when the mysteries were necessarily instituted by the king-priests of the divine dynasties during the epoch of Atlantis. Many who were already in possession of occult knowledge became so profoundly engrossed in selfishness that they could no longer be guided onto the divine path. Their subsequent abuse of this dominion over the forces of nature transformed them into veritable titans of malevolence. They rebelled against the White Emperor and descended into the practices of black magicians, thereby precipitating a protracted and ferocious struggle. At last, the chalice of iniquity brimmed over. The very forces of nature were turned against the land, until the magnificent continent, alongside all adherents of those selfish practices, plummeted beneath the waters of the ocean. Before the tempest descended, however, the men of the good law, heeding the summons to escape, migrated to a sanctuary of safety. Prior to the catastrophic overthrow of Atlantis, the mysteries had already been firmly established in ancient Chaldea and Egypt, the two preeminent nations of the fourth race, both functioning as offshoots of the grand Atlantean civilization. The Indian mysteries originated with their own priest-king, the Manu, who imparted foundational religious teachings to the primary branch of the Aryan lineage. From this seminal fount of the Aryan race, the teachings of the mysteries subsequently flowed westward, mingling with the more archaic traditions derived from ancient Atlantis. They infused the institution with renewed vitality and formidable power. The Greeks inherited their mysteries from Orpheus, who introduced them directly from India. Yet, regardless of the source from which the various nations acquired their mystic instruction, the underlying significance remained eternally consistent. All initiates belonged to the singular Great Brotherhood. During those primordial epochs, the mystery institutions were presided over by great adepts, whose profound knowledge was the harvest of a prior system of evolution. However, as time progressed and humanity matured, these eminent masters gradually withdrew, entrusting the mysteries to the advanced disciples of our current evolutionary paradigm. The source of religions. Two predominant schools of thought exist within the modern world: comparative mythologists and comparative religionists. The conclusions drawn by these respective disciplines regarding the genesis of religion stand diametrically opposed, although both predicate their arguments upon identical empirical facts. These facts reveal a striking similarity, not only concerning the teachings, character, and spiritual authority of the founders of various religions, but also regarding the principal trajectories of their lives. The narratives of these savior gods, alongside their doctrines, predate the birth of the Christian Savior, in certain instances by numerous centuries. This profound resemblance, frequently culminating in practical identity, signifies a common origin according to both scholarly factions. Comparative mythologists contend that this shared origin is rooted in universal ignorance. They posit that ubiquitous natural phenomena, coupled with the personification of these elemental forces, inevitably precipitated analogous concepts. This school maintains that the most exalted religious sentiments and dogmas are merely the refined emotional expressions of the barbarous conjectures made by primitive humanity. They assert that animalism, fetishism, and nature worship constitute the fertile soil from which the most magnificent blossoms of religious thought have sprung, and that the founders of the great faiths are but the highly evolved, lineal descendants of the frenzied medicine man. Conversely, comparative religionists maintain that the common origin is one of divine wisdom or gnosis. All religions, they argue, emanate from the teachings of divine men, who comprise a grand brotherhood of spiritual teachers. These enlightened figures periodically disseminate to the disparate races and nations of the world those specific facets of fundamental religious truth that are most aptly tailored to the exigencies of the populace. They posit that animalism, fetishism, and nature worship are the distorted and stunted remnants of an authentic religious faith, and that the founders of the great religions are individuals who have transcended the boundaries of ordinary humanity, thereby ascending as the spiritual guardians of the race. We do not hesitate to affirm our alignment with the perspective of the comparative religionists, for the scriptural texts of diverse faiths provide abundant evidence that their founders were spiritually advanced beings, whose teachings remain unsurpassed by subsequent contributors within those same traditions. The sacred books of the East offer profound substantiation of this reality. whereas the purported evolutionary refinement proposed by the mythologists remains utterly bereft of adequate evidentiary support. Furthermore, one discovers among primitive peoples myriad traces of exalted concepts that far exceed their inherent capacity to originate. When one considers that contemporary Aboriginal tribes do not represent our ancestral prototypes, but are instead the degenerate progeny of once magnificent nations, the manner in which they acquired such elevated ideas becomes comprehensible. These are the faint, lingering vestiges of a wisdom imparted long ago by a supreme religious teacher. It is unequivocally evident that humanity, in its infancy, was not abandoned to develop devoid of assistance. There have perpetually existed elders or sages, from whom less advanced brethren received indispensable direction and tutelage. Such guiding presences have forever stood beside the primordial cradle of mankind, imparting the necessary guidance and impetus to propel the race toward a more transcendent ideal of civilization. The inaugural great teachers were highly evolved souls hailing from alternate and even more ancient systems of evolution. They were the distinguished adepts of the earliest races, who established the first monumental occult fraternity upon this terrestrial sphere. These exalted beings vigilantly oversaw and guided primitive mankind. As individuals progressed and proved themselves worthy of profounder esoteric knowledge, they were instructed in the nature of the divine, the composition of the human soul, the hidden mysteries of the unseen realm, and the intricate mechanisms of the world's ceaseless evolution. Such constitute the enduring and uncontradictory facts inextricably linked to the mysteries. Religions, therefore, find their supreme source in the occult hierarchy, the eminently qualified guardians entrusted with the spiritual maturation of the human family. Reasons for esotericism. History has thoroughly documented the disastrous consequences of disseminating occult knowledge indiscriminately, and ever since the tragic demise of Atlantis, the initiates have meticulously shielded from the unpurified masses that sacred knowledge which equates to absolute power. Consequently, the most uncompromising prerequisites concerning moral purity, altruism, and steadfast self-mastery are imposed upon all who aspire to attain this higher wisdom. The temptation to exploit such profound power for selfish ambitions is far too overwhelming to entrust it to individuals governed by unbridled desires. An additional justification for esotericism lies in the premise that religions were bestowed for the explicit purpose of accelerating human evolution. Mankind occupies such radically divergent stages of spiritual development that what a philosopher readily comprehends may remain entirely unintelligible to another. Thus, to effectively reach and elevate all, it is imperative that instruction be meticulously adapted to the unique necessities of each individual. Religious doctrines must be as incrementally graded as the evolutionary process itself. Each seeker must be encountered precisely on their own level and progressively guided onward from that initial plane toward more majestic heights and broader vistas, all imparted in a fashion that resonates with their unfolding intellects. It is for this precise reason that all the great teachers have exclusively reserved the profounder truths for those genuinely capable of receiving and comprehending them. Secrecy of initiates. This has remained the chosen method of all illustrious instructors. Initiates across the ages have preserved a profound and unbroken silence regarding the sacred truths gleaned within the mysteries. From Orpheus, the earliest initiate of whom history catches a fleeting glimpse, to Pythagoras, Confucius, Buddha, Apollonius, Jesus, and Sakis, no supreme teacher has ever committed their esoteric doctrines to writing for indiscriminate public consumption. Herodotus, in articulating the rationale behind animal worship, observes, If I were to explain these reasons, I should be led to the disclosure of these holy matters, which I particularly wish to avoid, and again in reference to other sacred subjects. Concerning these, at the same time that I confess myself sufficiently informed, I feel myself compelled to be silent. Of the ceremonies also in honor of Ceres, I may not venture to speak, further than the obligations of religion will allow me. Jesus explicitly commanded his disciples to tell no man that he was the Christ, further instructing, "Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you." He undoubtedly harbored profound justification for such stringent secrecy. Many have recognized the immense wisdom of these injunctions only when it was tragically too late. Anaxagoras, Pythagoras, and Socrates are notable examples. The great teachers imparted this elevated knowledge strictly to their chosen disciples, propagating these arcane truths through the veil of allegories and parables. All that can be said concerning the gods, Strabo asserts, must be by exposition of old opinions and fables, it being the custom of the ancients to wrap up in images and allegory their thoughts and discoveries concerning nature. Pythagoras, the illustrious mathematical Mason, deliberately divided his instruction into exoteric and esoteric classes, and his deepest secrets were strictly forbidden from being committed to writing. The Society of the Essenes, which counted St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist among its ranks, instituted comparable distinctions, categorizing their adherents into neophytes, brethren, and the perfect. Similarly, Ammonius Saccas bound his own disciples by sacred oath never to divulge his doctrines, save to those who had been thoroughly instructed and adequately prepared. In Egypt, we observe this identical method in practice, for Clement states, the Egyptians did not entrust the mysteries they possessed to the general populace, nor did they divulge the knowledge of divine matters to the profane. He further informs us that the sphinxes erected before the temples and sanctuaries of initiation denoted silence and secrecy, signifying that all sacred truth is enfolded within symbolical fables and allegories. And he says of the mysteries, those who instituted the mysteries, being philosophers, buried their doctrines in myths, so as not to be obvious to all. The sages of Greece, according to Pausanias, never wrote otherwise than in an enigmatical manner. They concealed their profound knowledge beneath the veil of fiction, instructing in such a way that the vulgar masses might not comprehend. The archetypal Hermes convened his disciples within a holy place or shrine, where strict secrecy was imposed. In the perfect sermon he commands, "And ye, O Tat, Asclepius and Ammon, in silence hide the mysteries divine within the secret places of your hearts, and breathe no word of their concealment." This constituted the universal procedure. As articulated by William R. Singleton, 33rd degree, past Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. The wisdom of the Chaldeans, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Jews of Zoroaster, Sanchoniathon, Pharisaids, Cyrus, Pythagoras, Socrates, Plato, of all the ancients that has come into our possession is symbolic. In the method explaining the various symbols, religion and philosophy were veiled in allegorical representations. These symbols were displayed openly in the temples, to the profane altogether obscure, but streaming with beams of light to the initiated. Occult systems of writing. Various methods were employed by these instructors to simultaneously convey and conceal the profound truths of the mysteries. The three principal Kabbalistic systems are Gematria, which is predicated upon the numerical value of words, applying to the letters of a word the significance they hold as numbers. Tamura, through which a word yields its mystery by way of an anagram, the transposition of its letters, and notaricon, which may be likened to stenography. The system of number letters was derived from Chaldea by the Hebrews during and subsequent to their captivity. The Chaldeans formulated their cosmogonies and anthropogeneses through numbers, and their sacred texts were composed with this specific objective in mind. Pythagoras possessed a number philosophy, which in all probability bore numerous resemblances to the numerical treatises of Chaldea. This method was substantially developed through the Hellenizing tendencies of the cultured rabbis of Alexandria. The Gnostics similarly made extensive use of this number symbolism, the system of Marcus being exceptionally elaborate, and the books of Hermes likely stand as the most ancient repositories of number symbolism within Western civilization. Intimately connected to this practice was geometrical symbolism, which was likewise employed by Pythagoras, encompassing the square, triangle, point within the circle, cube, double triangle, 47th. Problem of Euclid, etc., with these geometrical figures objectively representing the numbers. In every cosmology from the earliest epochs, we discover the foundational concept of combining numerical and geometrical figures. There exists, additionally, the allegorical method, which serves as a presentation of truth in the guise of myths or parables, and furthermore, the secret sacerdotal tongue, the censor, which was known to the initiates of every nation. Thus, to accurately interpret the world's scriptures, one must possess the keys to all these varied systems. Object of the mysteries. The ultimate objective of the mysteries was the instruction and holistic development of man. They were the manifestation of genius, employing the sciences alongside a profound understanding of the human heart in the endeavor to purify the soul, seeking human felicity by the means of virtue. Significant emphasis was placed upon man's immortality, and the central purpose of the mysteries was to prepare him for a blessed state beyond. Consequently, these mysteries imparted teachings regarding the condition of the postmortem state, and strove to cultivate in the candidate the faculties that would enable him to independently verify such instruction for himself. Antiquity maintained that there existed a science of the soul, a profound knowledge of things unseen, gnosis, and now that the possibility of extending the boundaries of consciousness beyond the physical plane has been demonstrated by numerous experiments in psychism, the assertions of the mysteries are no longer beyond rational belief. The concept that the ego may transcend the limitations of the physical body and attain consciousness upon the higher planes of nature verifies the truth of the mysteries across all ages, and proves that nature's God, in infinite wisdom, through the ceaseless progress or development of his children, is initiating them from every field of labor to assist in his mighty work. This exalted instruction was not exclusively imparted by perfected initiates capable of functioning upon the higher planes, but the assistance of angelic hierarchies was also invoked, and those exalted beings descended to teach and elevate humanity by their presence. Iamblichus, the renowned theurgist of the 3rd and 4th centuries A.D., observes the gods. These beings are not gods in the Western sense of the term, but angels or devas. Plato designates them the minor gods to distinguish them from the supreme being, benevolent and propitious, impart their light to theurgists in unvarying abundance, calling upward their souls to themselves, procuring for them a union with themselves, and accustoming them, while they are yet in body, to be separate from bodies, and to be led around to their eternal and intelligible principle. For the soul having a twofold life, one being in conjunction with the body but the other being separate from all body, it is most necessary to learn to separate from the body, that thus it may unite with the gods and learn the truths of the intelligible world. The ultimate consummation of all this was to render the initiate a god, achieved either through union with an external divine being without, or by the profound realization of the divine self within. Sallust asserts that the fundamental objective of the ceremonies of initiation was to unite man with the cosmos and deity. The initiate maintained that the soul, once purified from all stain, could perceive the gods in this present life. That is, it could attain the beatific vision and hold communion with the immortals. Professor Harnack remarks that deification constituted the concept of salvation imparted within the mysteries. The Greek Neoplatonists termed this exalted state theophany, which denotes either a communication between the gods or God, and those initiated mortals who are spiritually prepared to experience such intercourse, or the presence of a god within man, signifying an incarnation or intimate blending of the personal deity, the union of the higher self with the lower self, its representative upon earth. Plotinus defines this transcendent state as the liberation of the mind from its finite consciousness, becoming one and identified with the infinite. The duration and frequency of this sublime condition depend entirely upon spiritual development. Proclus claims to have experienced this profound ecstasy 6 times throughout his mystic life. Plotinus states that he had achieved this state but 3 times as yet. Porphyry asserts that Apollonius attained this condition 4 times, whereas he experienced it but once and only after he was 60 years of age. This divine illumination may come and go as a fleeting flash, or it may endure for hours. Among the high initiates, the Word is truly made flesh, the spiritual union is rendered complete, and its duration remains continuous throughout life. The mysteries served as a preparatory academy directed toward this ultimate end. Philo, in discoursing upon the divine vision, says, "It is the special gift of those who dedicate themselves to the service of that which is to ascend by means of their rational faculties to the height of the ether, setting before themselves Moses, the race that is the friend of God as the leader of the way. The work of philosophy is naught else than the striving clearly to see these things." Proclus additionally observes, in all the initiations and mysteries, the gods exhibit manifold forms of themselves, and manifest in a multiplicity of shapes, and occasionally, indeed, a formless light of themselves is held forth to the view. Sometimes this light corresponds to a human form, and sometimes it proceeds into a disparate configuration. Taylor, too, correctly deduces the most sublime element of the epoptea or final revelation consisted in beholding the gods' high planetary spirits themselves, invested with a resplendent light. Within Plato's Phaedo, Socrates is depicted as stating, "Those who instituted the mysteries for us appear to have been by no means contemptible, but in reality to have intimated long since that whoever shall arrive in Hades unexpiated and uninitiated shall lie in mud, a symbol of the gloomy surroundings of the lowest region of the astral world. But he that arrives there purified and initiated shall dwell with the gods." Furthermore, in Phaedrus, Plato articulates, "Initiated into that which may be rightfully deemed the most blessed of all mysteries, which we celebrated when we were whole and unaffected by the tribulations that awaited us in time to come, and moreover when we were initiated in, and beheld in the pure light, perfect, simple, calm, and blessed visions, being ourselves pure, and as yet unmasked with this which we now carry about with us and designate the body, fettered to it like an oyster to its shell. Should we concede the existence of faculties within man capable of piercing the veil of matter, we shall find no justification for dismissing the unequivocal testimony of ancient authors that the mysteries were associated with a psychic and spiritual revelation. Hermes in his discourses imparts much concerning the gnosis. Gnosis of God constitutes the science of sciences. In the key, he informs us that the distinctive feature of good is that it should be known. This is the vision glorious. As articulated by Mead in his commentary, this consummation of ecstasis, we are told, was a transcending of the limitations of body, and was a faculty possessed by the progenitors of the race into which Hermes and Nautat are being born. The nature of ecstasy is further elucidated as the fruit of meditation and contemplation. The gnosis of the good is holy silence and a granting of repose to every sense. This is in accord with the yoga of the Upanishads, which demonstrates the unity of thought among those who have possessed first-hand experience. Hermes proceeds, "For it is possible, my son, that a man's soul should be made like unto God, even while it still is in a body, if it doth contemplate the beauty of the good." This is the true deification or apotheosis. Man is akin to God in that he becomes a god. The culmination of the evolution of the soul was the attainment unto the initial stages of deathlessness, described by Paul as the resurrection of the dead. The soul's vice, states Hermes, is ignorance. But on the other hand, the virtue of the soul is gnosis. For he who knows, he good and pious is, and still while upon the earth divine. Herein we observe the attainment of the divine state, that of adeptship whilst still inhabiting the physical form. Proclus maintained that initiation elevated the soul from a material, sensual, and purely human existence to a communion and celestial intercourse with the gods, and that a multiplicity of things, forms, and species were presented to initiates, representing the primordial generation of the gods. In speaking of Petasiris, Proclus informs us that this Egyptian philosopher possessed an intimate knowledge of every order of the gods and angels, and refers to a hieratic formula of theurgic invocation to the greatest of the goddesses, intended for inducing the vision of this power. Valens speaks of Nechepso, who attained unto direct apprehension of the inner way. Vedius, in the first half of the 1st century A.D., laments that he did not reside in those days of initiate kings, rulers, and sages who preoccupied themselves with the sacred science. In those eras so profound was their devotion to the holy mysteries, so exalted their virtue, that they left the earth beneath them, and in their deathless souls became heaven walkers and knowers of things divine. Vedius furthermore cites a Greek apocalyptic treatise of Nechepso, wherein the sovereign relates that he had remained in contemplation all night gazing into the ether, and thus in ecstasy he departed his physical vessel and subsequently heard a celestial voice addressing him. This voice was not merely an auditory phenomenon, but manifested as a substantial presence, guiding Nechepso upon his journey through the celestial expanse. Cicero regarded the establishment of the Eleusinian mysteries as the most profound of all benefits conferred by Athens upon other commonwealths, their effect having been to civilize men, temper savage ferocious manners, and impart to them the true principles of morality, which initiate man into the sole kind of existence worthy of him. The mysteries procured for mankind a genuine felicity on earth through the medium of virtue. He was instructed in the immortality of the soul and the inflexible laws of divine justice, and the great moral precepts were made known not only to the initiates but also to the profane. The mysteries indicated to men the path to live more virtuously and depart more happily. But, as we have observed, the objective of the mysteries was not merely the inculcation of morality, for as Gen. Pike astutely notes, had moral truths alone been taught the initiates, the mysteries could never have merited nor received the magnificent eulogiums of the most enlightened men of antiquity of Pindar, Plutarch, Isocrates, Diodorus, Plato, Euripides, Socrates, Aristophanes, Cicero, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and others. philosophers hostile to the sacerdotal spirit, or historians devoted to the investigation of truth. No, all the sciences were disseminated therein, and those oral or written traditions succinctly communicated, which reached back unto the primordial epoch of the world. The objective of the mysteries, therefore, was to instruct men in the genuine science of being, and to guide them up the stairway to perfection, to the superhuman stage, to the Christ and that which transcends even perfect masterhood. In this manner they sought to purify the soul, maintaining that the true domicile of the soul was within the higher spheres, the earth being a place of exile, and that to return to its birthplace the soul must liberate itself from the power of the world, must be emancipated from the passions and the impediments of the senses. The mysteries instructed men on how to attain the dominion of the soul, which was absolutely imperative, as we must flee from everything sensual, posits Porphyry, that the soul may with ease reunite itself with God. Thus the mysteries sought to sanctify men, to illuminate their souls and prepare them to return consciously unto union with the deity. The Gnostics universally professed that a man could so perfect himself that he would become a conscious collaborator with the Logos. The objective of the mysteries, therefore, was not solely to teach the unity of God and the immortality of the soul, as Warburton, Mackey, and other Masonic writers contend, but to enable each individual to personally verify these profound spiritual verities. These citations from the ancient classical authors and philosophers regarding the mysteries might be considerably extended, but this shall suffice to demonstrate the reverence and admiration in which the mysteries were held. Would these mysteries have garnered such exalted praise had they not known them to be of divine origin? As has been aptly observed, when men like Pythagoras, Plato, and Iamblichus, renowned for their austere morality, participated in the mysteries and spoke of them with profound veneration, it ill behooves our modern critics to judge them based upon their merely superficial aspects. Many have accepted without question certain derogatory assertions of the early Christian apologists concerning the mysteries, without taking into consideration the fact that the writers were animated by the spirit of bitter controversy. Due allowance should be granted for this, relegating such declarations to the same category as those of the pagans, when they accuse the Christians of being atheists and of practicing shameful rites. To presume that the mysteries were the fabrication of charlatans constitutes the pinnacle of absurdity. It is true that they degenerated with the passage of time, much like the Christian agape, but in their inception and for protracted epochs thereafter, they remained pure and noble. Indeed, the most sagacious and virtuous men of antiquity were not willful deceivers. The mysteries were indisputably the paramount institutions of antiquity. They encapsulated all that was most profound in philosophy and most spiritual in religion. Such were the ancient mysteries, to which Freemasonry stands as the rightful successor. Chapter 2. Ancient Eastern Rites. Undoubtedly, the ceremonies of initiation were originally few in number, and all were designed to symbolize the progression of the human soul. They served as the outward manifestations of an inward reality. Initiation, as will be elucidated in a subsequent lecture, constituted regeneration, a genuine spiritual emergence or rebirth. The candidate himself embodied the very figure symbolized: Hermes, Buddha, Christ, and the like. This state was the culmination of true initiation, representing an evolution of the human into the divine. Over the course of time, this spiritual truth suffered neglect, and initiation ceased to signify spiritual regeneration. The rites no longer typified the successive stages of the soul's progression, the mystic birth, death, and resurrection. The key to this spiritual science was forgotten, the master's word was lost, and initiation devolved into merely imparting to the candidate the traditional knowledge of the symbols as handed down from time immemorial. Gradually, the true significance of these symbols dissipated, and the symbols themselves were ultimately transmuted into crude dogmas. The ceremonies of initiation. The ancient mysteries were categorized into two distinct stages: the probationary path and the advanced or path proper. In the majority of schools, the probationary path was strictly preliminary. However, because certain traditions included this preliminary phase when numbering their stages or divisions, one must exercise caution to avert misunderstandings. Other traditions, such as those in Greece, bifurcated their mysteries into the lesser and the greater. Beyond these lay the true mystery of the path. The higher evolution belonged to the true, or real, mysteries, toward which all preliminary stages converged. A neophyte was compelled to attain proficiency in these disciplines before being permitted to undergo true initiation and embark upon the path proper, a subject that shall be examined in a subsequent lecture. There existed outer forms and ceremonies that represented and symbolized the true mysteries, yet little was comprehended of their inner essence save by those who had directly experienced them. Unquestionably, the ceremonies underwent alteration over time, but even during the periods of their most profound deterioration, we discover vestiges of this hidden wisdom intertwined with the ancient symbols, some of which have survived and may still be found within modern Freemasonry. The Egyptian mysteries. The erudite Greek historian Plutarch, himself an initiate of the Osirica, of which there was presumably a Thyasos at Delphi, imparts substantial and valuable information concerning the mysteries of Egypt. Naturally, he could offer nothing more than intimations, for, as he observes when speaking of the priests, their philosophy, which for the most part was concealed within myths and words containing dim reflections and transparencies of truth, as, doubtless, they themselves make indirectly plain by appropriately erecting sphinxes before their temples, as though their reasoning regarding the gods possessed a wisdom wrapped in riddles. So great, then, was the vigilance the Egyptians maintained over the wisdom concerning the mysteries of the gods. And the most profoundly wise among the Greeks stand as witnesses: Solon, Thales, Plato, Eudoxus, Pythagoras, and, as some assert, Lycurgus as well, who, by traveling to Egypt and associating with her priests, brought back to the memory of their countrymen this symbolic and mysterious art, encapsulating their dogmas within obscure sayings. When, therefore, thou hearest the mythic accounts of the Egyptians concerning the wanderings and dismemberments of the gods, alongside many such passions, thou shouldst remember what has been stated above, and consider none of these things as having been spoken exactly as they exist in actual state and deed. Plutarch subsequently expounds upon the mystery myth of Osiris and Isis. The narrative commences with the birth of the deities: Osiris, the elder Horus, Typhon, Isis, and others. Osiris and Isis, deeply enamored with one another, were united in matrimony. They governed Egypt benevolently for numerous years. Ultimately, however, the malicious Typhon, Osiris's wicked brother, consumed by envy, plotted his ruin. Typhon contrived a magnificently crafted chest and, upon having it introduced into the banquet hall, pledged to bestow it upon whomever it might fit perfectly. Osiris stepped inside and reclined, whereupon the conspirators in attendance surged forward, affixed the lid, and secured it firmly. They then transported the chest to the river Nile, from whence the currents bore it out to the sea. Upon learning of this treachery, Isis embarked upon a relentless quest to recover the chest. In the interim, the waves had carried it to the region of Byblos, where the surf deposited it within a particular heather bush or tamarisk tree, a species of acacia. This vegetation flourished around the chest, entirely enveloping and concealing it within its trunk. King Malcander, marveling at the formidable stature of the tree, ordered it felled to fashion a supportive pillar for his palatial roof. Nevertheless, Isis, having discerned the whereabouts and condition of the chest through the guidance of Anubis and the demonian spirit of a voice, journeyed likewise to Byblos. Reposing beside a fountain spring, she extended her graces to the queen's maidens, anointing their hair with ambrosia. This gesture secured her an invitation to the royal palace, where she assumed the role of nursemaid to the queen's infant. When she deemed the moment auspicious to reveal her true identity, the goddess laid claim to the structural pillar. Taking it down, she cleaved the wood from around the coffin. Then, placing the chest within a vessel, she conveyed the body to her son, Horus, who subsequently secreted it deep within a forest. Yet Typhon, whilst engaged in a hunting expedition, chanced upon it. Recognizing the corpse as that of Osiris, he violently dismembered it into 14 pieces and scattered them far and wide. Isis, informed of this desecration, endeavoring to reclaim the fragmented remains, succeeded in recovering all but a single piece, which had been cast into the river and devoured by fishes. Horus then engaged Typhon in combat, ultimately overpowering him, at which point it was triumphantly proclaimed that Osiris had risen from the dead. This serves merely as a preliminary outline of the myth, which harbors both macrocosmic and microcosmic significance. In the former sense, Osiris and Isis represent cosmic or supercosmic entities, symbolized respectively by the sun and the moon, whilst the elder and younger Horus typify the intelligible and sensible worlds. On a microcosmic level, the myth pertains to the profound mystery of initiation, the Horus or Christ stage of human development. In this latter aspect, it serves as an allegory for the mystical life of the initiate. Concerning initiation, Plutarch observes, "When the initiates of Isis, at the moment of their death, are adorned in these robes, it serves as a symbol that this reason, the Logos, resides with them, and accompanied by him and naught else, they traverse or walk there, that is, within Hades." The death referenced here denotes the mystic death unto sin. For it is not the growing of a beard nor the wearing of a cloak that produces philosophers, O Clea, just as it is not the donning of linen nor the shaving of oneself that produces initiates of Isis. Rather, a true Isiac is one who, upon lawfully receiving these rites, investigates through reason, the Logos, the mysteries exhibited and enacted concerning these gods, and meditates profoundly upon the truth contained therein. This mystery rite is referenced by Epiphanius as being solemnized within the temple of Isis, who is venerated as the Virgin Mother, or the World Virgin. In discussing the Feast of Epiphany, which constituted a day of immense significance in Egypt, intimately connected with the birth of the Aeon, he remarks, "Indeed, the leaders of the idol cults, replete with wiles designed to deceive the idol worshippers who place their faith in them, in many locales observe their highest festival on this very night of Epiphany, ensuring that those whose hopes remain steeped in error may be deterred from seeking the truth. For instance, at Alexandria, within the Coraion, as it is called an immense temple, that is to say, the precinct of the Virgin. After they have kept an all-night vigil with song and music, chanting unto their idol, when the vigil concludes at cockcrow, they descend with torches into a subterranean crypt, and bear upward a wooden image lying naked upon a litter, with the seal of a cross crafted in gold upon its forehead, and on either hand 2 similar seals, and on both knees 2 others, all 5 seals being identically rendered in gold. And they bear the image itself in procession, circumambulating 7 times the innermost temple, to the accompaniment of pipes, tabors, and hymns, and with merrymaking they return it below ground. And should they be asked the significance of this mystery, they answer and say, "Today at this hour the maiden, that is, the Virgin, gave birth to the Aeon." In the city of Petra also identical rites are observed, and they sing the praises of the Virgin. And him who is born from her Duceres, that is, alone begotten of the Lord. This likewise takes place in the city of Eleusa on the same night, just as at Petra and at Alexandria. Epiphanius, as an outsider, could hardly be expected to comprehend the rites he describes, and as an unyielding dogmatist he could not be relied upon to treat them fairly. But the importance of the passage is the testimony it bears to the fact that one of the most pervasive mystic festivals was intrinsically connected with a rite of resurrection. One may notice here the crowing of the cock, which is associated with the crucifixion of Jesus, and the cross marked upon the forehead, hands, and knees or feet of the effigy, or the one who has returned from the underworld. Epiphanius informs us that the mystic rite represents a macrocosmic mystery. Very true, but it equally represents a microcosmic mystery. The esoteric birth, death, and resurrection were familiar to all the schools and communities of ancient times, and the mystic rising again from the dead was an integral part of the universal mystic drama. The initiations of Egypt are detailed by C. W. Leadbeater, a prominent theosophical writer, as follows. The candidate was attired in a white robe, emblematic of the purity which was required, and brought before a conclave of priest initiates in a sort of vault or cavern. He was first formally tested as to the development of the clairvoyant faculty which he had been previously instructed how to awaken, and for this purpose had to read an inscription upon a brazen shield, of which the blank side was presented to his physical vision. Later he was left in solitude to keep a kind of vigil. Certain mantrams, or words of power, had been taught him, which were supposed to be appropriate to control a certain hierarchy of entities. Other ceremonies of the Egyptian mysteries are equally compelling. At one stage of his advancement, the candidate positioned himself upon a peculiarly hollowed wooden cross and, after certain ceremonies, was placed into a profound trance. His physical form was then borne down into the vaults underneath the temple or pyramid, while he himself descended into Hades, or the underworld, that is to say, in our modern nomenclature, he passed on to the astral plane. Here he underwent numerous experiences, part of his labor being to preach to the spirits in prison. For he remained in that trance condition 3 days and 3 nights, which typified the 3 cycles and the intervals between them, during which mankind was passing through the earlier part of its evolution and descending into matter. Then, after 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth / on the morning of the 4th day, he rose again from the dead. That is, his body was retrieved from the vault, and so placed that the rays of the rising sun fell upon his face, and he awoke. This allegorizes the awakening of man in the 4th cycle, and the commencement of his ascent out of matter upon the upward arc of evolution. According to Peachman, the Egyptian mysteries comprised 3 grades, designated as mortals, intelligences, and creators of light. The mortals were probationary disciples who were instructed in the doctrine, but who had not yet realized the inner vision. The intelligences were those who had attained the inner vision and had become men and received mind. The creators or sons of light were those who had become one with the light, had ascended to true spiritual consciousness. These three gradations are termed by W. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.